Yeah, absolutely. Well, good morning, everyone. I'm gonna, as I said, get these slides situated so that they're on the right screen. So I'm looking at you while I'm looking at the slides. Made that mistake last time. Let's see here. Swap. Yeah, and while I'm doing this, Mia, just tremendous job. You touched on a lot of things that I'm going to be talking about. So forgive the duplication of content. So I'm going to share this screen here real quick. All right. Is that showing up for folks? Oh, I'm sharing you, huh? No, it's you. Okay. All right. Well, hey, everyone. My name is Christopher Sage. I use he, him pronouns. I am the Emergency Shelter and Homeless Services Coordinator with the Joint Office of Homeless Services. A little bit of backstory on where I'm coming from today. I began my work in social services in 2010 as a case manager for houseless veterans with the Salvation Army. I got my start at Harbor Light. So that was the former safe site, well, soon to be safe site at that time in 2010. So that was Second and Burnside. You all know that area, the challenges there. Eventually that program moved out to Beaverton, but I continued working with homeless veterans in shelter for about 6 years. And so you can imagine we've got the oldest we had up there was World War II veteran, a lot of Vietnam veterans, a lot of veterans from current conflict, and then a lot of peacetime veterans. That is to say, there's a lot of trauma. You know, even if someone wasn't in combat, they've been institutionalized. There's some trauma there. There's some things to work through. So a lot of PTSD, a lot of substance use disorder, just general mental health, and just also a lack of sense of confidence in who they were as folks. I mean, they've been taught to be self-sufficient, and here they were across my desk asking for help, hat in hand. It was a very powerful and humbling experience. Following that, in 2016, I was managing Transition Projects Day Center. So I did that for about 3 years. At the time that I took over, we were seeing between 700 and 900 folks through that door every single day. The space had a capacity of 150. So when it was severe weather time, it was severe weather every day, whether or not shelter was called. That space was packed. And you all know that that's in Old Town Chinatown, again, the epicenter of the homelessness crisis in our city. And in my opinion, the epicenter of trauma. And that was during the opioid epidemic. So we were Narcaning folks. Most of them came back, thank God. So, my experience in de-escalation primarily comes from there, breaking up brawls, bringing people back to life on the street corner, and then just dealing with exclusions, public safety calls, knives, firearms, the works. So 3 years in that environment, I then transitioned to Join, where I coordinated a multi-agency team for family services and got off of the front lines. And now I'm here, and I'm grateful to be here. So that's a little bit of the backstory of where I'm coming from when I speak on de-escalation. So let me just jump right in here. So just a little centering, a little lighthearted stuff. Human need, everything that we're talking about here today, in my opinion, all of the behaviors that we're encountering that we are wanting to de-escalate and navigate stem from a need that is not met in folks. And you see a wealth of them here on this slide. Some of them are physical needs. Some of them are emotional needs. Some are psychological needs. We're here to get people's needs met. So I just want to center on that. So I am by no means an expert in training nonviolent communication. And I say that specifically because this is a system developed by a gentleman named Dr. Rosenberg. But I like some of the principles. So I just want to throw some of them up here, and I would encourage you all to go read the book. And those who have read the book, you will know that I'm not teaching it in depth. So there's four components to nonviolent communication. We've got observing without evaluating. So you're there in a crisis situation, you're there maybe doing case management, you're there in a milieu setting, and you're seeing a behavior that you need to navigate. You're observing without evaluating. You're not making judgment calls, you're just soaking up the facts and feelings of the moment. You're observing without evaluating. You're identifying and expressing feelings, not just the feelings in the person that is escalated or the folks surrounding them, but also in yourself. You're taking responsibility for your own feelings. We're going to touch on this later, that this work is not about us. And so we need to check ourselves every single day, make sure that our emotions are not coming into play in the scenario that we're involving ourselves in. And we need to stay present. There's two parts to wrap around this, and that's empathy and that's honesty. Honesty with ourselves, honesty with the folks that we're communicating with, and the ability to maybe not empathy, because maybe like Mia, you were saying so excellently earlier, I can understand. I don't know the specifics. Maybe I had a likewise experience, but I don't know. So I like to say empathic listening instead of empathetic listening. Empathic is you're opening your heart up to feel the feelings for someone, feel the feelings that are being expressed there. So empathy and honesty. Other parts of the non-violent communication that blocks compassion. So this is ways that we would talk about folks. Oh yeah, that guy's got PTSD. Oh yeah, that guy's, he's got manic depressive. You're diagnosing them. That's going to block compassion. That's going to block your ability to be open-hearted to the moment and that human right in front of you. Denial of responsibility. Look, that's not my job. Why don't you talk to the manager? Denial of responsibility. Demand. I demand you sit down and stop yelling. That's not going to help anyone. Deserve. I deserve to be treated with respect today. Not really. You're here to serve. So those are communication aspects that block compassion. So that's Dr. Rosenberg right there. I like to think of him as a dark Mr. Rogers. So he's got these puppets on his hand. One is a jackal, the other is a giraffe. So if we were doing a training in person, apparently they have these things that you can purchase. So you'll see that you can put these giraffe ears, these jackal ears on. You can have them facing externally or internally. And I just want to get us centered on thinking about, that first slide said, behavior influences behavior. So the way that you act outwardly and the way that you are internally is going to impact the scenario that you're seeking to de-escalate. So here's some examples of jackal ears in. Jackal ears, so let me back up a second. The reason that he chose those animals, the jackal, attack, attack, attack. The giraffe, he chose it because physiologically they've got the largest heart of a mammal in the animal kingdom. So big heart, big compassion versus attack. So the jackal ears in, you're critical of yourself. You're saying, oh, I should have done this. I feel guilty. I feel shame about what I did wrong. Jackal ears out is you're pointing the finger at someone. You're saying, you did this. You are being angry. You need to calm down. Excuse me, sir, you're being very aggressive right now. That's jackal ears out. Giraffe ears in is we're having compassion for ourselves. We're recognizing our feelings. We're being honest with ourselves. I feel this because I need this, right? It's tying it back to the need. I didn't have breakfast today, so I'm feeling a little edgy right now. As opposed to, man, I'm so stupid. I should have gotten breakfast today. Why am I even in this work, right? It can spiral out of control. Giraffe ears out. Excuse me, sir, are you feeling upset about this, that, or the other thing? Because you need, right? That's the syntax of this system. And again, I'm not qualified to train on this, but I love the framework. Are you feeling X because you need X? Obviously, that's a stilted way of saying it, but weave that into your consciousness, weave that into your language as you find your own way and your own style of doing this work with folks. So off of that piece, now to the de-escalation. So what we're going to look at here is how crisis evolves. So on one side, we've got the behavior that we're seeing, and on the other side, we have the way that staff ought to respond. And again, as you heard kind of with my experience in the past, I'm thinking big picture, milieu spaces, potential chaos at any moment, but these can also apply to the individual that's sitting right across the desk from you or that you're having a one-on-one conversation with, pulled off to the side, just engaging with. But I do come at it from a big picture, large milieu space, but I'll try to speak to both sides of the equation, I guess. So anxiety.
Question for you, Chris, sorry to interrupt. All we're seeing is the main de-escalation slide.
That's really unfortunate. So that's that stuff we were talking about, just blazing through it. There we go. So that's Mr. Rosenberg right there. That's the cat we were talking about with the little puppets, you know, so you got the giraffe ears out, the jackal ears in. Fundamentally, compassion in for yourself, compassion out for others. We don't need to be attacking. We want to focus on feelings. We want to focus on needs that are unmet. All right, we can move forward, Paul. Move forward to where it has the chart. Perfect. Yeah, so on one side, you're going to see the participant behaviors. On the other side, we're going to see the staff responses and anxiety, and dis-ease. So let's talk about things that we see on folks that read as anxiety, read as dis-ease. Everyone's got a different baseline. So throw some in the chat, throw some out with your words. What shows you that someone's feeling a little bit anxious?
Their body language.
Yeah, body language, rapid breathing, a lot of different things. Okay, this live transcript thing is blocking the chat for me. Here we go. Tone, rapid speech. Yep. Facial expression, eye contact. And, you know, again, everyone has a different baseline. And so, you know, someone that's on methamphetamines is going to look really, really anxious. They may be under the influence of methamphetamines, but they may not be anxious. Someone may just have a high metabolism, but they may not be anxious. So we just want to get to know the people we're working with so that we can understand what their baseline is. Sometimes you'll have people who they're high energy, but they come in the next day and they're flat, right? That's a different baseline for that person. So we want to notice the change in behavior from the baseline of the folks that we know. But yes, everything everyone's saying there, those are the behaviors that we generally would associate with anxiety and dis-ease. Paul, we can move forward. Next slide. Yeah. Support and healing curiosity is what I like to say that we need to do. So we want to support that person, and we want to offer curiosity. You know, how are you doing today? What's going on? Anything I can help you with? As opposed to, you seem anxious. Next. Defensiveness and pushing back. So the star is on there because we're going to dig into that a little bit more as we move forward with the de-escalation agenda. And so defensiveness. So that's someone saying, why do I have to do this? Show me the rule book. No, I'm not going to move over here. No, I'm not going to, you know, put my voice down, or what have you. Staff response. Paul, let's just go through all of them because I think I kind of flow with my left and right arrow keys with my cadence of speech. So we want to offer clear directives and set limits. That's our response to folks who are being defensive and pushing back. So, you know, I need you to, you know, the curfew's at 10 p.m. for this reason. That's just the rule right now. Like, please let me know if you can fill out a grievance form. I can take it to the manager. Let me know if you have a job that's later. But right now, the limit is that we do have a 10 p.m. curfew. But you're very clear and you're setting limits. Next up is, so this is an escalation continuum. I should have said that earlier. So people are anxious, we offer support. Hopefully that de-escalates it. It doesn't, they're defensive, we offer limits. Hopefully that de-escalates it. The majority of our work is in that second line. But, you know, again, be gentle with yourself. Perhaps someone is in a state that has nothing to do with you. Something happened before, something's happened before their entire life. It's not on you as long as you're following these principles and everything that is being taught here today. So risky or harmful actions. That can look like self-abuse. That can look like harmful behavior to others. That can look like pushing a chair or a computer screen over. And our response is physical intervention. And now I want to be very clear. When I say physical intervention, I don't mean we put hands on people. You know, in the day spaces, they say don't step in the middle of a fight, but it's really hard to not do that. but that is the rule. We don't physically intervene. So what does physical intervention look like if our role is to not put hands on folks? Well, it looks like maybe moving objects out of the way that people could use to self-harm or harm others or harm you. I think a good example that I bring up often is at one of the shelters several years ago, someone was reporting suicidal ideation, and they came up to the front desk and were asking for help and just talking about their emotional state. And without warning, they kind of grabbed some scissors and started dragging them across their arm, and it was nearly fatal. And so that's not something that could have been avoided because they acted like that. But if you know that someone's maybe in a state where they might pop off, maybe start moving things away from them in a calm manner. You move the objects that people can do risky behaviors with. If there is a fight breaking out in a space, you start moving chairs, you start asking people to leave the room. Physical intervention can also look like decreasing the number of folks that are in the room or in the space, the number of observers, etc. So someone's calmed down. They've released that energy, and they're starting to regain their composure. Maybe they're apologizing to you now. Maybe there's, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to call you that. I shouldn't have done that, etc. Regardless of what the consequence is to that behavior, we move forward with delivering trauma-informed care. We reestablish therapeutic rapport with that individual, because that's our job, is to offer trauma-informed care and be forgiving with folks where society has not been. And so no matter what has to happen next, whether it be an exclusion, whether it be whatever consequence your program has, we reestablish a rapport with that person. And we don't instill further guilt and shame in them. All right, next slide, Paul. Let's just keep it. Let's just do the whole slide, and I'll just walk through it. Yeah, thank you. So with setting limits, we want to make sure that we're direct and reasonable. We're very clear with folks. We don't know what frame of mind folks are in, so we want to use very clear, simple language. We want to make sure that our limits that are being set are reasonable ones within their capability, within the capability of the space that they're in, within the capability of the program, etc. We want to make sure we're being reasonable and direct. And we want to make sure we can back up what we're saying. Hey, if you quiet down, I'll give you this extra privilege or whatever. I'm just making something up. That's not realistic. You want to make sure you can back up what you're saying. I think some other people will say, hey, if you don't stop doing this, I'm going to call the police. That never goes well, but make sure you're going to back up what you're saying and don't say things that are going to escalate people further. And so our options for setting limits: interrupt and redirect. Someone's yelling at you. Excuse me, I'm sorry, I can't hear you right now. Can you lower your voice a little bit? Or I'm sorry, I can't hear you in this really loud space. Can we go to the office over here? Or when you stop yelling at me, then I can hear you better. Or if you stop yelling, then we can start working to a solution. So those are some options for how to jump in and start setting limits. Next slide. And I apologize, everyone. I'm moving quick today and have more meetings to go to, but please jump in with any questions. I can just go on a train here for sure. So again, I'm not used to doing this in a virtual world, even after a year. Normally this would be in person. So we would all get up, we'd stand up in lines, and we would review the supportive stance. So the supportive stance, a lot of people, when you're demoing this, it looks like a fight stance, everything except your hands up. So you've got one foot out in front, the other one diagonally 45 degrees, pointing 45 degrees, and you've got your hands down at your side. I like to keep them up front. Up front partially because I was in spaces where people would throw punches at you, but you keep your hands open. You don't have your hands hidden. They're not in your pockets. People who've dealt with a tremendous amount of violence are wondering what's in your hands, and that's a trigger for them. So the supportive stance, it communicates respect. It's non-threatening, and it maintains safety. The way that it maintains safety is, let's say first of all, you wouldn't want to be standing in front of a door, but let's say you're standing on the way to a door, someone pushes past you. If you're standing square and you're on your heels, you're getting knocked over. And next thing you know, that person's getting a 6-month exclusion if you're in, a certain certain system that has that kind of exclusion. So you want to maintain safety because you make yourself a smaller target if someone does choose to strike you or throw something at you or push past you. And also, you're not square with that person. You're not looking like you've got some challenging body language, because that'll escalate folks as well. So the supportive stance, think about that. You can look it up and you can find other images that show it, but we're not going to be demoing it here today. All right, next slide, Paul. Yeah, thank you. Things to consider just as you're moving through a space. I'm not sure how many folks here are working in milieu environments or environments where there's multiple participants. I know a lot of motel shelters are being set up. Things are a little bit different, but there's still common areas. Where are you in relation to others? Are you standing real close to them? Are they sitting in a chair and you're standing above them? Are you in the middle of a crowd? How are you moving and holding your body? I like to say, you kind of move with confidence, but at the same time, humility. Oh, excuse me, sir. My apologies. If you bump into someone, respect is paramount. So many of the folks that we're working with and so many of the folks that we work with as colleagues have been institutionalized, and they will tell you that respect, well, I should say disrespect, can equal death. So you want to speak the language of the people that you're working with and working for, and understand that respect goes so far. So how are you moving your body? How are you speaking? Are you respecting the person in front of you? Those are things to consider. We can move forward, Paul. Yeah, how do you use your voice? Tone, volume, cadence. Cadence being the rhythm of the speech. Volume is obvious. Tone. So you want to just be conscious of these things as you're speaking. We all have different voices. We all have different cadences, but you also want to be a little bit of a chameleon. You want to be open to seeing whether or not something's working for the person that you're dealing with and adjusting the tone, the volume, or the cadence. All right, next slide. All right, yeah. So we'll just move through this. So this is zooming in on that second line. I think there's a couple more lines, Paul. Thank you so much. So again, we've got one side and another side. So defensiveness and pushing back. Our action is to be more clear and directive. So again, this is an escalation continuum. And now let me be clear that this can start at any one of these spaces. Well, any one of the first four. So, and it may bounce around. So let's just go linearly. So someone is defensive. They're pushing back. They're questioning. Why do I have to follow this rule? Why is this rule in place? Show me the rule book. We answer graciously. People are going to be asking questions either as just asking an honest question, or they're trying to challenge you. Regardless, you answer graciously. Someone asks you a direct question, you give them a direct answer. Someone challenges you on why this is, you just let them know why it is. You don't catch feelings about the challenge to your authority, because again, it's not about you. So maybe that doesn't work. They're refusing to follow the rule. Now we define the boundaries. This goes back to that limit setting that we were talking about earlier. You define the boundaries of the program. You want to make sure, first of all, that you're treating everyone equally in the program, and everyone is having to follow the same rules, because they're going to bring that up if that's not happening. But you want to define the boundaries if they're refusing to comply with whatever program rules are in place. If that's not working, they go to the release. That's when they start yelling at you. That's when they start getting in your face. They start gesturing big, okay? We're not talking about physical release here. They're not throwing stuff, because this is just level 2. This is that defensiveness. So much of the de-escalation work that we do is, one, within ourselves, because someone's in our face yelling at us. They're screaming. They're cussing us out. They're saying all kinds of things. We just hold our space and listen. And people need to release that energy. And if they see that you can take that you're holding space, you're being respectful, you're not getting emotional about it, so much respect can be cultivated in that space. So much trust can be cultivated in that space. It's unreal, the magic that happens when you hold your space and listen. And when I say hold space, I mean, one, yeah, you're quiet and you're active listening like Mia was talking about, but you're holding, especially if you're in person, you're holding your body. You're not getting nervous. You're not twitching. You're not looking around. You're not looking like you're afraid. You're holding your space with peace. And that's going to come through your own personal work of cultivating your internal ecosystem. We'll touch on that a little bit later, but you hold space and listen. And also for those who work in these milieu environments, you know that when you're going through a situation like this, you've got dozens of sets of eyes on you. They're watching you. They're watching how you're acting. They're watching your body language. They're watching your facial responses. They're watching if you're rolling your eyes. They're watching if you're putting your hands in that person's face and telling them to calm down. But when you hold space and listen, you're going to have people coming up to you and saying, I really appreciate how you handled that. You know, I was watching you and you're real and I appreciate that. And they'll start coming to you. They'll start coming to you with questions or needs. I just can't tell you how many times just standing in the middle of that space in Old Town. I mean, you've got people who are fresh out. I mean, they still have the sweatpants on and they've got the plastic bag with all their property. And they're sitting in the front row just watching, scoping out the scene. And I got some people yelling at me, getting in my face, and I'm holding my space. And then they come up and they say, hey, I appreciate that. And then they start asking for services because they're proud. They're not trying to walk up, take a number and, you know, ask for services in front of everyone. They come up and say, hey, you know, here's what's going on. Can I get this? Where can I find this? There's so much work that can be done when you hold your space and listen. Now people may start to intimidate you. So, you know, that's when they're getting in your face beyond a comfort zone. Maybe you've held your space and maybe you backed up a little bit. You know, oh, excuse me, sir, you know, I'm going to back up a little bit. I feel like you're getting a little close. They keep pushing. They start putting a finger in your face. They start saying, I'm going to follow you to your car. They start saying, you know, I'm going to catch you outside. Whatever it is they're saying, they're intimidating you. You know, we have people say, hey, I'm going to bring a gun and I'm going to shoot up this place, you know, that kind of stuff. We take all threats seriously. Even if you know this person, I'll tell a story about that later. So you take all threats seriously and bring in team members. So when you're taking all threats seriously, you're actually educating folks because people can't make threats like this out in the quote unquote real world. We're here to help people reintegrate into society and have healthy lives that they can live independently. And so we're not doing people any favors when we let them, weird way of saying it, get away with threatening your life. So I'm not saying that you call the police on them. I'm saying, hey, we can't talk like that in this space. You know, that's a threat against my life. And I take that very seriously. Oh, no, I don't mean it. But you said it. And that's inappropriate. And so, you know, here's what the consequence is for that. But I hear you. I just need to let you know that that is not okay. If they're in that kind of relationship, you can have that one-on-one conversation. But if they're intimidating you and threatening your life, you bring in team members. We're going to talk about team dynamics a little bit later, but you take all threats seriously. So here's an example. There's a gentleman that I used to assist frequently. You know, had a lot of mental health issues. Young guy, frequently carried around a firearm, and so he eventually was excluded from a program and came back and said, you know, walked up, got in my face and said, you know, I'm going to come back and I'm going to, you know, I'm going to shoot you tomorrow. So, you know, we took that really seriously and because he was known to carry firearms. And so we took that seriously and he came back the next day and I met him at the door and he said, oh, Chris, I was just joking. Like, you know, I wouldn't do that. You know, I was just angry. Yeah, but you know, so-and-so, you said this, and here's the consequence for that. And we weren't able to see him for several more months. And I ran into him on the street several months later, and he thanked me for doing that, for holding that boundary, because it got him engaged in another program, which found him housing. I'm not proud of you know, dishing out exclusions, but I'm just saying we don't see the full spectrum of what happens in a person's life. But we are able to provide them structure and accountability when we hold boundaries with folks. And I think that's also one way that we can assist people in finding their place in this world is by holding them accountable to behaviors that we know are not acceptable out in the quote unquote real world. Yeah. Yeah. And I apologize. I'm going to try and keep the heavy stories to a minimum, you know, trigger warning. I believe that was sent out to you all. It's just kind of my baseline. So I apologize if I'm getting too graphic with some things. So we've got the intimidation. Thank you for the note, Alexandra. So we're talking about intimidation and bringing in team members. We'll talk about team dynamics later. So again, we're back to the tension reduction. We're back to them regaining their composure. Maybe they're apologizing for saying that they're gonna, kick your butt or follow you home or, other unmentionables. We resume delivering trauma-informed care. Any thoughts on that? I'm moving real fast. Anyone want to provide examples where they saw this in action? Oh, you can move to that next slide. Thank you.
I just want to say I find your stories very helpful when you're explaining these things.
Thank you. Paul, can you back up? I feel like I missed something. Oh, I did not. All right, forward, please. Thank you so much. So yeah, philosophy that I like to have is run to the door, walk through it. So often, I'd be in my office and I would hear a lot of yelling. I'd hear stuff being thrown, and I'd run out. I'd run down the rampway, and then I would walk around the corner and play stupid, like, oh, what's going on here, guys? Because you want to like run to the door, walk through it, like, because you're bringing calm into a space. There's stuff that is going to be an emergency. Absolutely. Someone's having a medical emergency, you haul to that emergency. But there's some conflict. People are yelling. People are screaming. Someone's saying he's got a knife or whatever. You don't want to add chaos to that environment. You want to bring peace and calm. So run to the door, walk through it. Energy is everything. So it also conveys confidence, and it begins the process of settling people at ease, as you can see here on the screen. Then you can start assessing the situation. And now here's where we're going to get into the team dynamics. And so being the manager, I kind of showed up on the scene and would take control. That was my natural instinct. But if there are managers here in this space, people that are supervising staff, that you want to build confidence in folks. You want to be able to take a day off and know that something's going to be handled all right. So you want to show up. I would show up on the scene, and if something was being handled, I would just look down there. I'd say, thumbs up to someone. They'd be like, yeah, I got this. And I'd walk back. That was a success, Also a success is breaking up a fight, when your staff are petrified. But, it goes, you just assess the situation. And determine if you're needed as a team leader or auxiliary team member. Paul, let's move forward, please. So the team leader, as it says here, isn't always the first on the scene. They should be the most confident and competent, and whomever has the best rapport with the escalated individual. Team leaders conduct the crisis response, lead the de-escalation and crisis intervention, and dismiss unneeded support when able. So let's say I show up on the scene as manager of this space, and I know that person hates me, right? I'm not going to get in there and be like, hey, so-and-so, you need to, like, they're just going to like get that guy out of here, and they're going to get angry at me, and they're going to get escalated. So maybe if you are the first on the scene, let's just say this, let's not talk about manager-staff relations. Let's just talk about being a staff member in a space. You don't have a rapport with someone, but you're the first on the scene. When you have a staff member that shows up that knows that person, you step back. You become auxiliary, and we'll talk about that in a second. Or if you're feeling like, I'm not sure I can handle this today because you checked in with yourself, you understand that you maybe don't have some needs met, you maybe are having some feelings. Maybe you say like, hey, Alexander, can you please take this? I'm not feeling like I can keep myself calm today. So yeah, most confident, most competent, not always the first on the scene. And so so let's just say you are the team lead. You see a bunch of people standing around. This is what they tell you in CPR. You tell people, call 911, get the AED, get the Narcan. You're directing people. That's that team lead role. So Paul, let's move forward and talk about the auxiliary. So as an auxiliary team member, you're supporting the team leader, ensuring the milieu remains safe. This may mean clearing the scene of other participants, dangerous objects, and or supporting unattended posts. So, we're talking about physical intervention, right? So, one example is there was this in the middle of the whole space, two people got up, started throwing punches. One person's obviously weaker than the other. They're on the ground, getting struck multiple times. And, you know, we're not supposed to touch people. And I put a hand on the shoulder and pulled the person off. Auxiliary team members, because they were well trained, were moving chairs. They're asking people, hey, can you please step back? Hey, guys, we all need you, or, you know, folks, we all need you to just exit right now, especially when there's a lethal weapon on the scene. But you know, you have auxiliary team members moving chairs. You have them asking folks to stay back. You have someone directing someone to call 911. You're moving objects. You're clearing the scene of other participants, and you're supporting unattended posts. This is for more like day space shelter environments. You know, you'll have folks who see that there's a fight going on, and they're saying, hey, can I still check in on the shelter wait list, please? You know, they don't care. They're here to get their need met. They're not worried about those knuckleheads. You know, so you got to balance it all. So you support unattended posts, you remove those objects, and you check in on folks too, because they're, as we all know, the folks we're working with have experienced untold trauma, and there are things that may be happening in the space that are triggers for them. So you want to be walking around and checking in on folks as well. You doing okay? You know, hey, how'd your day go? You know, this, that, or that. You're drawing that energy away. So additionally, an auxiliary team member may be responsible for tapping out escalated colleagues. I heard you talk about this earlier, Mia, as well. You know, you want to do this gently and without calling out that colleague. You can address the concerns later in private. You know, hey, Alexandra, you know, why don't you let me take this? You know, Richard needs to check in with you or whatever. You know, it's not like, whoa, Alexandra, you need to calm down. Let me take over, right? That's not going to help. You know, so auxiliary team members, you're just as important as a team lead in that situation. All right, let's move forward, Paul. Goodness, I'm going way too fast. I apologize, Alexandra. We're nearing the end. Might have an early break, bummer. So know when to walk away. You know, if you are escalated, it's okay to step back. If you need to walk away, tell a colleague, inform your supervisor. Again, this was written for a union environment. Oh, well, I guess we're still in one. Take a 15-minute break. Communication is key. And then do your best to recognize when you are not needed. If the 2 or 3 responding staff have an event under control, walk away and see how you can assist in other areas of the program. If the team leader asks you to stay, please do. Crisis intervention and de-escalation is fluid and ever-changing. Your primary responsibility is to manage your own behavior and be aware of your surroundings. Stay calm, communicate clearly, and act as a team, even if this means walking away. I know we've all seen situations where we're not even going to talk about the escalated team member right now. You've got 3 people handling a situation, and you've got 4 other staff standing around watching. That's not helpful. We want to clear scenes. We want to attend to other folks, like we were saying with the auxiliary team member. But this is, again, checking yourself. Are you being effective this moment? If you are not being effective, check in with your team members. Say, hey, I'm going to head over here and do this. Do you have this? Yeah, okay, great. And you walk away. More bodies is not always helpful in a crisis scenario, especially if it's being handled by those who are involved. All right, we can move forward, Paul. Thank you.
Hey, Christopher, I have a question for you.
Yeah, go for it.
This is Volley. I have a question. Oftentimes, I've noticed in some situation, colleagues can aggravate the situation even more. How do you, as a team member, inform them, hey, let me handle this. I need you to, you know, walk away or something without having to be like a bossy, without having to sound like, you know, in control of it. Because I've noticed in most situations, the team member can escalate the situation, but how do you tell them to walk away and let us deal with this?
Yeah. Paul, can you go back to the closing part slide, please? To answer your question, you know, that's that example that I gave of, you know, hey, Alexandra, so-and-so needs to check in with you over here. Let me take over, you know, kind of a misdirection, redirection kind of thing. Just having that syntax in your brain of, just drawing someone away to a fictitious task, or so-and-so needs to talk to you, or hey, let me take over. Whatever you're doing, you're remaining calm. Does that help? So yeah, thank you for asking that question. So I'm thinking, I'm in your spot, someone's escalating a situation. I don't know members of the team. I don't know the participants. I might step up and just kind of, again, kind of like that run to the door, walk through it kind of thing. Walk up and just kind of say, hey, what's going on? You know,
Yeah.
Or just say, hey, can I check in with you? I'm just trying to understand what the situation is, or if you know the participant's name, you know, just asking for information, drawing out facts and feelings from a situation. And it's kind of like that interrupt and redirect almost, but with your colleague. And again, I hear what you're saying, that you don't want to call them out, and that's important. That's great, good instinct. So interrupt and like, hey, I'm sorry, I was just overhearing this. Can you tell me what's going on? Oh yeah, oh okay, you know, and then you jump in, maybe you take over, maybe you bring your piece into the situation. Now you also talk about talking to a supervisor about it. I think at that point, you know, once the situation has died down, maybe you can check in with that staff member one-on-one and just say, hey, you know, I know I'm new here. I felt that maybe things got escalated there. How'd that feel for you? Oh, okay, boom, boom, boom. You go back and forth. Like, I feel like I might have handled it this way. Yeah, someone saying, I'm new here. Can we debrief the situation? And then I see ... Or if you know that your manager is on site and you see something escalating with a staff member, maybe go to the manager first and just say, hey, you know, maybe I'm not reading this correctly, but I feel like this is going south real quick. Can you check in on this? And then you kind of follow along and observe, because maybe they have a relationship with the participant and the staff member. That's just kind of my off the top of the head advice.
No, thank you. I appreciate that. That helped a lot.
So these closing tips, behavior influences behavior. So how you show up to work and treat others directly influences how you're treated. So do your best to be aware of your own feelings and needs and how they affect your actions. Keep in mind the reality of precipitating factors. Participant behaviors and escalations have their origins far before you showed up. You are experiencing the effects of a lifetime or even a single day of trauma. It's not about you. So I think a lot of us have seen in different contexts, or even this context, that iceberg image. So above the surface is the behavior, and then below the surface is everything leading to that behavior. So keep in mind that you're just seeing the tip of the iceberg, and it's not about you. Even if they tell you that it's about you, don't take it that way. Say, oh, I'm sorry that it came across that way. Can you tell me what's going on? Can you tell me what I can do to help? You know, how can I assist you? Do you have any questions? You redirect to making it not about you. But yeah, precipitating factors. And when you understand those, you can then use that to stay rationally detached. So you can't control precipitating factors, but you can control your own response to escalation. Rational detachment sounds kind of cold, like your mind is somewhere else, because I just said at the beginning, stay present, but you're rationally detached. I like to think of it as like your heart is open for compassion, but your heart is shut down for any negative feelings. You're rationally detached from that, those negative things within yourself. You're not getting a negative feeling off of someone yelling at you. You're not feeling angry. You're not feeling disrespected. You're not feeling any of those things, because you see the human in front of you, and you understand that there's precipitating factors. You understand that your job is to serve and maintain therapeutic rapport, and you're rationally detached from escalating responses within yourself. And do your best to always maintain unconditional positive regard for those you serve. This will allow you to pursue and maintain therapeutic rapport. De-escalation, in my opinion, begins with relationship and empathy. Next slide, Paul. Thank you, Paul, for bearing with me. I do not see the next slide.
Sorry, it ended the slideshow, but I'll get that up in just a...
This has been great, Chris. Oh yeah, the lighthouse.
Spoiler alert. It's the cheesy part, Alexandra. Back up. Oh, that's right. I added a new slide, but I guess I didn't save it and send it to you, Paul. I'm going to close with this, but I want to throw something else out here. We talk about burnout in this role. Someone turned me on to a, no, Paul, it's not in there. I didn't save it. You're doing great. Someone turned me on to a concept of moral injury versus burnout. So we talk about burnout, and I think that that leads us to perhaps taking things negatively upon ourselves. Like, gosh, am I not cut out for this? I can't do this. Like, I'm not able to be compassionate. I suck at this. That person got mad at me. I wasn't able to meet the need, etc. That's burnout. But I like to reframe it as moral injury. So, you know, not to be simplistic, but, you know, you set out to save the world and help houseless folks. And next thing you know, you're getting called the N-word and getting a punch thrown at you. That's moral injury. And that's hard on the soul. That's hard on the spirit. And so don't beat yourself up if that's hard, because of course that's hard. All you're trying to do is help and make a positive change in this world. And you're on the receiving end of abusive behavior. 1, precipitating factors. 2, stay rationally detached, but understand that that takes its toll. Don't beat yourself up. Don't feel like, oh, I'm not cut out for this. I'm burned out. No, you're suffering moral injury. And so our work is to keep our ecosystem clean and clear. Mind, body, spirit. That whole triune self needs to be replenished every single day. You get your exercise in. You get your fresh breaths. You know, you eat well. I'm not telling you how to live. I'm just saying what works for me. You know, you keep your mind clear with positive stuff. You know, feed it positivity and uplifting things, and then keep your spirit flowing with light and keep yourself hopeful. And then when you can do that, I feel, in my opinion, you're going to be able to decrease the effects of that moral injury and come back better every single day. So I'm glad the slide's not up there, so I don't have to like read what you can see on the screen already. But I really love this analogy of the lighthouse. It just kind of, I think I got it from a recent, well, not recently, but one of the colleagues that I had at the Salvation Army. She was a pure saint. She passed away and just was just an amazing mentor for me. And you know, this idea of being a lighthouse for folks, the analogy in my mind is that the folks that we're working with are always going to be sailing on these choppy seas of trauma. And even if they crash into the rocks and they sink and they meet an end that breaks your heart, we want to be light in their memory always. I think about this when I think about some veterans that I placed in housing years back, and I knew that they died of an overdose in housing and alone. They were in housing, that's great, but they met an end that broke my heart. But I was able to have peace within myself, that I knew I was light in their memory. So however you are acting in this work, be light in the memory of the folks that you serve. So that's I'm gonna get off the soapbox, and I appreciate you listening and engaging today.
Where are you going? Don't go anywhere. Thank you, Chris. I appreciate it. Does anybody, we are done a little bit early, but before Chris jumps and goes and jets, are there any burning desired questions to ask Chris in regards to his experience, or, you know, some strategies that Chris has used working in a day center and then having that therapeutic expertise, or even being a specific gender or race? And then Chris, feel free to look in the chat and see all the kudos that you got before you exit. But let's just provide a little space, and then don't worry, we're gonna go to lunch because I have to use the bathroom. It's extremely bad right now. No, I'm joking. So any questions for Chris? I love Chris's story. I met Chris at the day center, and just watching Chris operate is phenomenal. I've learned so much from Chris. Chris taught me my first de-escalation workshop. So when I got to the joint office and Chris got onboarded, I already knew what time it was. He has plenty of more expertise to offer us, but I will silence myself to see if anybody has any questions for him.
No, but thank you again for sharing your experiences and stuff, because that is how I learn, like putting examples in the air when you're talking about stuff. So I appreciate that. again.
Right on. Excellent questions and welcome to this work.
All
Well,
right, cool.
Alexandra, thank you for the opportunity, and thank you everyone for listening and bearing with my technical difficulties. So glad you're all here doing this work and really hopeful for the future.
Yes, thank you, Chris. No problems. We appreciate you too. Thank you so much, folks. So again, thank you for bearing with us. It seems like it would be a good moment, because I know it's been like a long 3 hours of us just going nonstop, and I apologize, for us to take a break. And then the original plan was lunch was going to be from 12 to 12:45. And we're going to have to stick with that beginning at 12:45. We can't adjust that because a facilitator is coming on board. So I will be here. I'm going to be in this vicinity. I'm going to turn off my camera. Feel free to reach out to me directly. I will have access to my email. You can turn off your cameras and enjoy your time, or you can sit here and chat, you know what I'm saying? Do it appropriately. Just be mindful that we are trying to practice de-escalation, trauma-informed care, and harm reduction.
I did see that there's two
Sound
questions.
good?
There seems to be 2 questions in the
Oh.
chat as well.
Okay, cool. Let's find those. Thank you. Appreciate it,
I
Mia.
did see the one about avoiding conflict based on position or title. That's the one I did see. Can whoever wrote that please explain more of what you're saying? Oh, and I see racism as well. I believe Trish, did I pronounce your name correctly? Are you still around? I know we just tossed a break.
Hello,
Hey,
can you hear me?
sure can.
Hello? Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, Trish, I can hear you.
Okay, I can't hear myself, but I can see the caption. My question is just the position, like typically if you're, well, example, if a shift lead is escalating a situation, and then you're just a general staff person, I've witnessed that it's difficult to step in and correct what's going on, because the shift lead puts you in your position and maintains control of the situation, even though the way they're controlling it isn't really appropriate.
Yeah, I mean that's a tough one. I think first thing that comes to mind about protecting yourself and your employment is to make sure that you are acting appropriately and you're not calling them out in that moment. I believe it was Mary had asked earlier, same strategies in my mind would apply. Maybe you can step in and just ask about what's going on. Maybe if you have a relationship with that participant, you can jump in when there's a space and maybe draw the conversation away from the shift lead to yourself. And at the end of the day, it's that person's responsibility for their own behavior. And if you're minding your role, you bring it up to the manager. You debrief with them and say, I didn't feel good about that. And maybe debrief with them. In my opinion, that's how I would navigate that.
Okay.
Susie, I saw you wrote about racism. Navigate racism in your roles working in shelter. Navigate it the same way I do in this world, with this works for me is I think it's because I stay fairly rationally detached from most everything except my family. People are coming from their own place, and I don't appreciate that behavior. I don't appreciate that language. I don't appreciate how you're treating me. So I'm going to withdraw myself from the situation. Or if I'm there to serve someone, I'm immediately what comes back to mind was sitting in my office doing I forgot what they were called, Alexandra, reinstatement, right? So someone had gotten excluded from shelter, and I'm sitting there in the day center in my office reinstating the person. They've got white pride tattooed on their throat, you know, an SS on the eye, you know. So I'm just kicking it with them and, you know, addressing their behavior. And so how do I navigate it? I navigate it like any other behavior, and I don't catch feelings about it. That may not work for everybody.
Thanks.
But what a beautiful day, everyone. I appreciate all of you and the work you're doing. I'm going to sign off. Thank you all for the space you're holding here.
Great.